Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video. My ex husband's name is Daniel, 35, male. We were in the same high school growing up, but remained acquaintances till about 10 years ago when we got married. I was already deep into my career as a lawyer. He worked as a teacher in a nearby well-reputed high school. We were both financially stable and never had to depend on each other to make ends meet. I was watching a game with my friends at a local pub one night 10 years ago when I met Daniel. That was it. As soon as we locked eyes across the room, there was a spark between us that was obvious to both of us. That evening, we shared a table and spoke for several hours. He was an amazing guy with so many talents, especially for his age. I couldn't stop looking at him. That night, we ended up exchanging numbers and we've been together nearly every day since. But now, almost a decade later, I'm beginning to suspect that perhaps he was only drawn to me because of my accomplishments and appearance. I was so drawn in by Daniel's charisma and his love for all things simple. There were several instances wherein I'd wish list an item from Home Depot, and he'd insist on building it for me from scratch. Dan and I built almost all our furniture together through the years. Starting off strong from the beginning itself, we rushed into marriage right away within 3 months of knowing each other. But I suppose I should have been more alert when our marriage's first warning sign materialized as a red flag. He was the perfect partner in a relationship, and I made sure we took our time before we tied the knot. You see, his love for me grew exponentially, and not in a positive manner either. After a year of our marriage, he started digging deep into my circle of friends, especially the men around me. If there was any guy he remotely felt was interested in me, a happily married woman who never took off her ring, he would coax me into cutting them off. It was foolish of me to fall for his sweet manipulative words the first couple of times. I didn't realize he was trying to get rid of every male around me till he hit the last nerve. My cousin Tim, 45, male, texted me one fine morning telling me he was back in town and that he'd love to grab some coffee together like the good old times. Daniel snooped into my phone and woke me up with sheer rage. He claimed I was cheating on him and called me several names I still shudder thinking about. He refused to calm down, pushed me away once or twice, I don't even remember, and told me we were done. I was completely devastated as the lack of trust my husband had in me. Why was he that distrustful? Did I do something wrong in the past to have triggered him? Did he numb down his emotions this entire time? Growing up, I only had brothers around me, which meant the occasional WWE moves on me, Nerf gun fights, going to hockey games together, and so much more. I was close to all of my brother's friends, but they all treated me like their baby sister. Was my husband insecure about my proximity to men all these years? A week later, my husband showed up at the door and got down on his knees to apologize. Before I could even explain myself or who Tim was, Daniel started begging for my forgiveness. He told me he found out the truth from a mutual friend and that he felt so guilty about throwing a tantrum without hearing me out. Funny enough, he still wasn't hearing me out. He kept begging me to take him back. I lost count. I still loved him and I couldn't be so harsh as to not give him a second chance. We moved back in and things seemed to be going well once again. We were back to our old loving ways and he stopped stalking every move of mine, which felt like a breath of fresh air, honestly. Cooking dinner together every night after work felt romantic and we could finally hold proper conversations once again. I guess you could call it the calm before the storm because he went right back into his old stalking and obsessive ways. The trigger was a congratulatory bouquet my colleagues gifted me at work. Mind you, it wasn't just a single person, let alone a man who gifted me the bouquet. My whole team gifted me a box of chocolates and a beautiful arrangement of tulips to congratulate my promotion to the position of senior associate in the firm. I couldn't wait to get home to my husband and tell him about it. I frantically knocked on the door and jumped into his arms, but he once again pushed me with so much force I almost fell to the ground. He demanded what is in my hands and who gifted them to me. The only improvement here was that I at least got to tell him something before he stormed off in his car. I told him that I got promoted and wanted to celebrate my promotion with him, and that the flowers were from my team, to which he countered me with a, "How many men are in your team exactly?" I can't believe how he always managed to turn even the happiest day of my life into a disaster because of his inability to trust with the bare minimum. This time, I didn't bother trying to run after him or try to contact him. I let him leave, and I hoped I never had to deal with his pathetic self ever again. I still remember sipping on some wine that night, trying to make the most out of the remaining hours left. I celebrated my promotion alone in my living room, watching a rom-com movie with some pizza and wine. I removed the wedding band and cried myself to sleep. The inability to wrap my head around his insecurity, despite my desperate attempts to make sure no man could ever hamper our marriage, gave me insomnia for days. And it was about time I put myself first. Of course, he tried coming back into my life a couple of times, but I was certain that he was not going to change at this age. Promises with no action are just manipulation at their finest, and I wasn't going to let my mental health be wrecked by him. We still lived under the same roof since we bought it together. I simply slept in the guest bedroom the entire time, avoiding contact with him altogether. I could tell it was killing him from within, but I decided to rip the Band-Aid off anyway. A month after he moved back in, I slammed the divorce papers on the desk as he munched on some granola for breakfast. You could see him turning red with fury. He flung a fork at me. I still remember having to run away from my own house in my PJs and calling 911. It's been a year since the incident, and I've moved to a new place I could call my own. My marriage with Daniel traumatized me to such an extent every ounce of my being was repulsed by love. I thought I wasn't capable of it anymore, considering how drained I was. Dating apps in this generation just didn't hit the spot for old school romantics like me. I focused on my career and adopted a tabby cat from the shelter. Best decision I've ever made, to be real with you. It was a breezy and chilly Saturday evening when I was out and about grocery shopping at Trader Joe's. My phone started to buzz a couple of times, like a series of texts coming in one by one. When I checked the phone, my heart sank to see 7 messages from Daniel. What did he want to do with me now? Why is he spamming me with texts now? His messages read something along the lines of, "How are you doing?" and "I'm getting married next week." A sudden jump for sure, but I was happy for him, albeit sad for who the girl was, who had to tolerate his insecurity next. I responded by congratulating him and telling him I'd try my best to come, but I could be busy on the actual date of the wedding, since it's a weekday. Knowing him, he probably got offended in some weird, crooked way and decided to make jabs at me by telling me how his fiancée is extremely beautiful, patient, loving, and young. Yes, you heard that right. His fiancée, Monica, was a 25-year-old woman. He kept emphasizing her age, but sadly for him, all my remnant feelings for him died the day he tried to assault me. The name Monica sounds extremely familiar to me, and I kept trying to recall where I heard it before. I wanted to snap myself out of it because a part of me thought indulging in finding out more about his fiancée would hinder all the personal growth and healing I've done. I went on with my evening snuggling with my cat and decided to call it a day earlier than usual. My subconscious haunted me the entire time, begging it to be some other Monica and not the Monica that I know. The day I received a call from Tim, all my nightmares came to life. My stomach felt so uneasy when I heard Tim tell me his daughter is getting married this coming week and that he'd love to catch up. You see, ever since my ex-husband and I had our first fight over Tim, I struggled to make time for relatives other than my immediate family. I had to cook up some excuse and tell Tim I couldn't make it at that time. He does not know the truth behind my divorce and couldn't even meet Daniel. This was going to be one hell of a mess, I could tell. I told Tim the entire history that Daniel and I had, how his text sent Daniel in a spiral, how I couldn't keep in touch with any male relative in the fear that my marriage would break, which it ultimately did, and how his daughter Monica might just be getting married to the same Daniel we know. Tim sent me a recent picture of Monica and him, and I forwarded that to Daniel out of the blue. He responded with annoyance, asking me if I'm already trying to break his second marriage out of jealousy by trying to instigate that his fiancée is cheating on him. I can't believe how dense this man is. The single sentence was enough to send him off the radar for days. Monica is my cousin Tim's daughter, the one you falsely accused me of cheating with. Okay, so Tim called me today, 3 days after I posted this, telling me how the wedding got postponed for another day. We both feel like it might just get cancelled altogether, but we shall see. Monica apparently came home crying to her parents that her fiancé all of a sudden didn't want to get married anymore, and upon demanding an explanation, he never gave her the clarity. Cliche douchebag move, Dan. As of now, I'm just trying to process how creepy this whole situation could have been if he never texted me that he was getting married. Imagine meeting your creepy ex-husband at a family dinner married to your cousin's daughter. It just gives me shivers thinking about it. Like, I wouldn't be so against it if the divorce was mutual and on good grounds, but I know what he's capable of doing. She's not safe. It's been a week since the last update. Tim and I came clean to Monica about Daniel and his history with me. I recall meeting Monica a couple of times when she was still a toddler, but seeing that cute toddler grow up into this beautiful woman who also almost got lured into a terrible marriage filled with potential misery. I'm all for believing that people can change and whatnot, but I am so protective of my family. As of now, I think Monica is equally disgusted, or to put it in better terms, repulsed by the idea of marrying her aunt's ex. I think this is going to be my last and final update because as far as Monica and Daniel are concerned, they've decided to split. Tim told me how Daniel came over to the house to apologize not just to Monica but to Tim and his wife, Mary, 42, female. I think it was a sweet gesture, but in all honesty, I'm so relieved that I could prevent this disaster. At the same time, I can't help but think, what if Daniel had changed and loved Monica? What if he could have made her genuinely happy? I feel miserable again. In all honesty, it sounds like you endured a lot and you truly deserve a better partner. I honestly believe that his mental instability may be a result of unresolved difficulties from his past. But this story took a turn in your favor, so I'm satisfied. I don't know how to feel about this story either. I've always believed the quote, "Not a bad person, just not your person," resonates with me even in this scenario. I can't help but feel bad for your ex-husband, but at the same time, both sides need to have the truth in front of their eyes. I have a daughter, Tori, 4. My brother Jason has a girlfriend, Carmen, who has a daughter, Leah, 5, with her ex, who does not see Leah. Jason and Carmen have been together 6 months and don't live together. I met Carmen first at a dinner when they had been together for 4 months, and the next time I saw her was when she and Jason came to my house with Leah. Leah and Tori were playing together in my drawing room. I was watching them, and Carmen was in the kitchen with my mother preparing tea. After a while, I heard the girls raising their voices, so I went over to see what happened, only to find Tori tearing up and Leah looking very angry. I asked the girls what had gone on. And after a fair bit of untangling, I figured out that Leah had told Tori that they were cousins, and Tori had said that they weren't. This upset Leah, who kept trying to make Tori admit she was wrong, which Tori would not do. Leah kept insisting they were cousins, but Tori said they can't be because Jason isn't Leah's dad. Both girls were demanding I settle the debate, so I just said that no, they aren't cousins, but that doesn't mean they can't be friends. And someday, if Jason becomes Leah's dad, they might be cousins. Leah immediately burst into tears. I called Carmen back into the room and explained what happened. Carmen insisted I should have told the girls. Leah was right to make her feel validated and part of the family. I argued that I wasn't going to lie to my daughter to force a narrative. This was the second time I was meeting Carmen, and the first time the girls met. Did she really expect me to gaslight my daughter for the sake of what she told hers? At this point, Leah was inconsolable. So Carmen and Jason left. Jason has since told me he thinks I owe Carmen an apology. He said even though Tori was right, it would have been easier to spare Leah's feelings and explain the situation to Tori later. I told him I wasn't going to lie to my daughter and teach her that you adapt the truth to fit the situation. I was happy to stand my ground on this until Jason said Carmen is refusing to see the family. Our parents sided with me. Because of this, since she takes it as proof we don't like her. I don't think I was the for taking my daughter's side, but since Carmen is making such a scene, I'm beginning to think maybe this is a bigger deal than I realize and maybe I messed up. NTA, I think you handled the situation as best you could and even told the girls one day they could be. Carmen is playing a dangerous game with her daughter's feelings. Have only been with a man for 6 months and pushing the family narrative. She's the one setting her daughter up for heartache, and you were just being honest in an awkward situation. The fact that Carmen is now refusing to see everyone just proves that she's immature and pushy. NTA. You were truthful to both of the kiddos, which is what you want to do. And you're spot on. Leah and Tori are not cousins, but that shouldn't stop them from being friends. No, you handled the situation quite right. My husband and I have 3 girls, 7, 5, 4. Both of us have very demanding jobs, and we both work long hours and occasionally travel for work. When my oldest was born, we planned on getting a nanny, but my mother-in-law and father-in-law didn't want her to be raised by a stranger. So they moved in with us and took care of her, helped around the house when my maternity leave ended. As much as I love my mother-in-law and father-in-law, I can't live with them. My husband felt the same, so after a few months, we bought them a house very close to ours. It's in our name, but we furnished it and pay for everything except for groceries. The house has 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms. The girls currently share a room and have a twin-over-queen bed. My oldest has the top bunk, twin, and the younger 2 share the queen. The younger 2 used to fight over blankets, so we got them each a sleeping bag. My 4-year-old has a unicorn, my 5-year-old has a mermaid, and my 7-year-old also wanted one and got an elephant. These aren't like camping sleeping bags. They're thick and extremely soft, and the girls love them. My brother-in-law, sister-in-law, and their kids, female 6, male 4, were visiting, and the kids stayed in my kids' room. I wasn't thrilled when I heard they were staying in my kids' room, but my mother-in-law assured me that she would take all of the toys out and that the kids just liked the bunk bed. My kids were spending the night with their grandparents for one of the nights that my brother-in-law and his family were there. I told my mother-in-law that my kids would get their room and everything went fine. Until I got to the house with the kids, and my niece and nephew were both throwing tantrums because they didn't want to give back the sleeping bags. I pulled my mother-in-law aside and asked why the kids were using my kids' sleeping bags, and she said that the kids liked them and that families share. This is my kids' bedding. I get them sharing some toys, but not their sleeping bags, especially when she knew that they'd have my girls that night. They're too big for her to throw both of them in the washing machine, and at that point, it was too late for them to do 2 loads of laundry, so my kids had to go without their sleeping bags. I told her from now on, none of the other grandkids will be sleeping in my kids' rooms. We're giving my oldest her own room, since I can't trust her to respect their belongings, and if this happens again, she won't be allowed to watch my kids anymore. My husband agrees that she shouldn't have let them use the sleeping bags or at least wash them before my kids got there, but he thinks I went overboard. Am I the a-hole? ESH. Why on earth are you having kids that your in-laws are raising to the point they have a room there and you bought them a house? Maybe it's a cultural difference, but I don't get it. It's like the guys wanted to be parents, but not parent. Do the kids care that sleeping bags were shared? If not, why do you care? Grandparents could have at least asked first. Kids or parents, at least. But sounds like you have control issues.